afternoon, everybody. Sitting around here, myself, Chandler John, State President. I've got Tyler Comas, the Southwest State Vice President. We're right now, in the time of recording this, in the heart of Green Hand Fire Up season. So the Green Hand Fire Up Conference is a conference for our first year members, are oftentimes freshmen. We refer to them as Green Hands. So we have a conference for them to help explain what exactly is FFA, how do you become involved, what are the expectations of the organization, and it's also a great social event.
Yep.
So Tyler, you got done with your Green Hand Fire Up when?
Mine was on Wednesday, October 9th, so not quite a week ago, but still fairly fresh.
And how do you feel that went?
I think it went really well. At the Atlantic Schools, thank you for hosting that, but it seemed really organized. All the rooms, the rotations were all on a single line, so all you gotta do is just send them next door, and then once you get to the end of the line, they go out to the cafeteria to eat pizza. So it went really well, and one of the big things that I took from that was there was a couple members that came up to me afterwards and were like, "This is great that we did this, but what can we do now? What is there like beyond conferences that we can do?" And a couple things that I kind of told them was step out and do something different that you're not used to. Like the example I gave, my brother, he's a green hand, and we come from like a production cow-calf operation, row crop, so basically, your typical Iowa farm. And a few weeks ago, he did dairy cattle judging at the Northwest Missouri State Fall CDEs. So we've never seen a dairy cow in his life. Not really familiar with that industry, but went down there and then they placed 8th in the contest. So they did pretty well, and I think there's a lot of different contests out there. And Chandler, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of contests out there that students that don't know a whole lot can jump in and learn a lot about any particular thing. Like livestock judging, for example. How much can you learn about a cow or a pig or sheep or something just by going to a livestock judging event?
Oh yeah, I think there's something to be said about when you're attending these conferences. Green Hand Fire Up, Ignite, Amplify, Transform.
Yep.
Those are conferences coming up in November and January as well. They offer members mountaintop moments, is kind of what I've referred to them as. Is like you get really excited for the organization. Like, yes, I want to be involved. I want to be involved in every way possible. But now what? Because, we kind of contain this energy, this enthusiasm for the organization and what we're all about in these conferences, and then we release them back into the real world.
Yeah.
And, they go home, I would assume anyway, I know for me it was anyway, you go home, you talk to your parents about it, you're so excited about it, you talk to your advisor the next couple of days, and then regular life starts picking back up.
Yeah.
No, so I think you're exactly right when you talk about these different contests that are coming up. So, livestock, soils, all of which that are kind of in the swing of things this fall. In my opinion, there's two ways that you can look at these contests. There's the competitive side of things where you're like, I'm here to win it. This is what my plan is. Like, I'm prepared. But there's also the side of things where you're like, well, kind of like what you talked about with your brother. Never really seen a dairy cow before, but took an interest in it. You know what? I'm going to go do this, and if I do poorly, hey, I do poorly. I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said about that. Yeah. But beyond contests, so, we're thinking from a state perspective and a district perspective. Mm-hmm. But what do you think a Green Hand could look at doing, or a first-year member just in general could look at doing other than just these contests?
I think, probably getting as involved at the chapter or district level as you possibly can. Like, I know we're getting into that time of year where a lot of chapters are starting to do fruit sales. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good start when you're a freshman, getting to know some supporters in that community and, kind of working with your friends and family, saying, okay, so this is like kind of the fundraising side of what our chapter does. Now going out to the public and saying, this is what we do. And a lot of, in my community, I know especially, everybody knows when fruit sales is. They know it's right there, that first part of October, and they really expect a lot of, the FFA kids to come out and show their packets and kind of, talk with a lot of people. And, I built a lot of relationships in the community by doing that, going door to door and say, hey, are you interested in looking at this packet today? And just kind of talking about your fruit sales. So building relationships within your community. But not just that, like getting involved in your chapter, like I said earlier, but maybe going to meetings or helping your advisor, helping those chapter officers, and kind of doing little things like that that may spark your interest within your chapter. And for me, that's where a lot of my stuff started, was getting involved with my chapter, and then eventually leading to district and state and national levels. So I think if somebody finds a niche in that chapter and they kind of see something that they can bring to a district or bring to the state,
absolutely,
I think that's pretty important for the association.
Yeah, it's important as well. I think something that's really cool about our organization is, you kind of hinted at it, there's learning moments everywhere. Mm-hmm. Now, I get it. Everyone, think of learning like I'm sitting in a classroom, whatever. So using an example like fruit sales, like you talked about, that's an opportunity that you can discover, hey, you know what, I've thought about doing sales before.
Yeah.
Or, maybe some of our older members, like, you know what, I've thought about doing sales before.
Yeah.
Am I actually, do I actually enjoy doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And the relationships that you build, and just the networking alone. I mean, I know for me personally, the way that I got involved in my FFA chapter, I never went to Green Hand Fire Up. I never went to Colt. Mm-hmm. That's just not something I never did. Mm-hmm. I was too intimidated to go to any of them anyway when I was in high school. But there's really something to be said about getting involved in your local level and the power of asking. Walking up to your advisor and being like, hey, what do you have going on this week? My parents used to joke, like, I would come home from the office, quote unquote, at like 5.
Yeah.
Because I would hang out in the ag room until like 4:30 or whatever. Yeah. And just volunteer time, that sort of thing. I think there's something really to be said about just taking that extra time in the ag room and getting involved locally there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agree with that. And I think a big thing that sometimes we don't maybe push enough, or at least for me personally, I don't push enough, is our organization is a very safe place to test out your leadership style. Yeah. So you and I, for example, I think we function very similarly. Mm-hmm. Like, give us something to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't go to an event, like a graduation parties. I know I'm thinking really, really like off season here, but graduation parties are the worst for me because I don't like just sitting and talking. Like, it's not like I don't like talking to people, but it's like, let me serve cake. Let me
do
pour
something.
Punch. Something. I can talk to people then. Give me a job.
Yeah.
You don't know that person from Adam. I don't care. Give me a job. So you and I are similar in that sense, and I know there are people like that elsewhere. But there's really something to be said too. If you're more like, you know what, like, I'm doing football, I'm doing volleyball, like I'm really involved in marching band, drama, whatever, and fall is just stupid busy for me in general. There's nothing to be said about, you know what, when things slow down in the spring, if things slow down for you, spend a little bit of time in the ag room.
Yeah.
If that's something that interests you.
Yeah.
A big thing that I've told people is that FFA gives you a lot of opportunities and will open a lot of doors for you.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's for everybody.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's just, if you give it a chance, if you give it a try, and it doesn't work out, okay, fine. I mean, I don't know. How involved were you in athletics when you were in high school?
I played basketball for 1 year, and then FFA kind of like was my sport. That's what my mom always told me. Like my brother would always be like, "Well, why is Tyler always gone? Like he's not in sports. Why is he always gone?" Right. Well, then she was like, "You know how sports you're always traveling or you're at different games. Well, that's FFA for him. Like." He's always off at this conference, or he's judging here, or doing something here. But like when I first started, the only reason I really joined, there was 2 reasons I joined. One, my dad was the president of the chapter, so I kind of felt that push to be like, maybe I should join because he was in it.
Right.
2, I did it to meet girls too. I mean, like, there's not a lot of guys that are like, we could use this to meet girls, and I mean, and. It's funny, like, you laugh at it, but, like, I got to meet a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I go through Snapchat, and I talk to people all the time that I met at Green Hand Fire Up 4 years ago. Like, I know a couple people up here at DMAC that I met at Green Hand Fire Up a few years ago. So, those are the 2 reasons I really joined, and then eventually getting more involved in the organization, and then kind of seeing what it has to offer really pushed me, running for chapter president and district office, and then now obviously state office. So I really did enjoy the organization, and I think there's a lot to be said about some of these members out here that aren't chapter officers, that aren't district officers or state officers, and they're really great leaders. Like,
oh yeah,
there's lots of members I know in chapters, doing chapter workshops I've got to see, and they are like really, really great leaders, and seeing the passion that they have, even though they may not serve past the chapter level when they graduate. But there's a lot of times people think of FFA members as the farm kids, the typical farm boy that came off the farm,
right?
Or you got the farm daughter or whatever. But I know my chapter alone, there was, I think this year's officer team, over half of them have never had any connection to agriculture, and then three of them are girls.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the number is now nationally of number of girls that are within FFA that hold chapter office positions.
Majority of leadership in FFA is held by women,
and that's kind of cool to see that it's evolved so much that it's no longer the old future farmers of agriculture. Now it's National FFA Organization, Iowa FFA Association. Now just kind of seeing the change in membership that we have. And I think a lot of you guys listening to this, if you are maybe I'm not sold on FFA because I don't come from a farm, I don't have any connection to agriculture. That's not where FFA is not based on agriculture anymore. That's a building block to the organization, but that's not our sole focus. Our sole focus is trying to build the best leaders. Career, personal growth, career success.
Right.
That, some of that has to do with agriculture, but not a lot of it does. But,
No, I think you're exactly right. You got me thinking about a couple of different things. You talk about that leadership style that never goes past the chapter. Mm-hmm. Some of the most influential people in your community probably were FFA members, maybe never chapter officers. Yep. I was never a chapter president. Mm-hmm. I ran. I never won. So there's something to be said about that. West Marshall FFA was here at the Enrichment Center a couple of days ago, and they brought in their 8th graders because they were doing a tour of DMAC Ankeny, is basically what it was. Yeah. Something really, really cool that I saw is some of their chapter officers came in, and they've never had any experience facilitating, they've never led a workshop, they've never led a setup, but they were kind of in the workshop room with us shadowing. And I gave them a couple of opportunities, like, hey, do you want to lead this next activity? And they're like, sure. Yeah. And they took to it like cows to water, just completely natural, just so this is what we're doing now. They cared, they showed focus. I think it's huge, and it's huge how much of our organization has changed, has evolved, like you were talking about, and how much it hasn't. And what I mean by that, Paul Hassman. So Paul Hassman is 105 years old. I had an opportunity yesterday at the time of recording this to spend time with Paul. Paul served as a state officer in 1934 to 1935, when the organization was very, very young. The Blue Jacket hadn't even been adopted yet. That's how long ago Paul served. Yep. But in conversation with Paul of what did FFA stand for? Not the letters, but what was it based upon when you served? And the big things that he talked about was work ethic, dedication, and just caring for your fellow human. Mm-hmm. And yeah, as much as we've grown and technology's come along and everything else, and that's still our foundation, that's still our core. Mm-hmm. Agriculture, that agriculture easily applies to that, leadership easily applies to that, but in a basis, that's what we're all about.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like you said, it's kind of cool to see those principles that the FFA is based around, and just kind of seeing how a lot of that applies now to not just contests, but everyday ag class, or what you learn in ag class, or anything of those lines that maybe you didn't think about before you stepped into that classroom. So
in 2 sentences or less. So you kind of talked about it at the beginning. Mm-hmm. This freshman member, this Green Hand member that really enjoyed the conference but doesn't know what to do now. 2 sentences or less. What would be the advice that you give? I'll answer 2, but
yeah. step outside your comfort zone, try something new.
I think that's really fair. For me, I would say never underestimate the power of volunteering, and don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
I'm being a little hypocritical coming from a guy who is indeed afraid of failure, but but there is a lot of power in, like, think of a contest I did, radio broadcasting or livestock judging. I grew up on a livestock farm, but when it comes to livestock judging, I'm awful.
Yeah.
Like, just awful.
Yeah.
Radio broadcasting, something I really enjoy, sitting behind a mic, talking, whatever. I'm not going to say I'm over the moon amazing at it,
Yeah.
but it's something that I enjoy.
Right.
And I never would have found that out if I never would have tried it.
Mm-hmm. And that, like, kind of same thing you said, like, with your livestock judging and ag broadcasting, like, extemporaneous speaking for me was something I really kind of enjoyed. My aunt did that back when she was in FFA, and she made it to nationals. So, I tried it my junior year, and I made it to districts and got a bronze at districts, but tried it again my senior year, and I got a silver at state. So
right.
I think, even like you said, don't be afraid of failure. Like, when I saw that rating at districts, I was like, well, what now? I mean, there's not much I can really do. But as soon as I got back to the ag room, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to, like, prepare myself for next year. I'm going to do it again and, get all my notes ready, try, prepare myself a lot better than what I did the first time in. It's like, I think about this a lot. It's not how you look at failure, it's how you overcome it.
That's right.
Like, you can sit all day long and, like, just be like, well, I can't do anything now. I didn't do good. Well, you can say that, or you can say, well, how can I improve this? What can I do better to make the next opportunity as great as I can and do as good as I can while I'm doing it?
Or how do you help the next person do better than what I did?
Yep.
I think that's a great thing that FFA just in general encourages. I don't think it's wrote down anywhere, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
But no, so Tyler, congratulations on you. Way to be observant. I think that's a very 10,000-foot view of saying, you know what, we've encouraged these members, we've got these members ready to go with Green Hand Fire Up, but what now? And I think a lot of things that you've been talking about, I think, hit that nail on the head. I think definitely for those individuals who are like, you know what, yeah, I am going to get involved in the chapter level, but you still want another taste of, like, that, how it feels to be involved with a district sense, a state sense. I think the Ignite, Amplify, Transform conferences, I think those are huge. I know that Mr. Johnson has been contacting advisors about that, so that opportunity is out there. Chapter visits from state officers, I think that's another really cool way. I know that there's opportunities on the association website to get signed up for those. Or if you go on the association website, find our emails, you can shoot us an email, we'll figure it out. But I think all of those are really cool ways. So I appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk about this and share your never-ending wisdom, the multi-layers of Tyler. But thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for being involved, and we will see you next time.